One night, Thomas the Tank Engine was taking a midnight train of coal trucks. As he was trundling along for home, Thomas puffed along a line he'd never been through before, and it was only then that he heard a faint whirling sound. That sounds like a traction engine, he thought. As he puffed on, he still heard the whirling getting louder and louder. "Let's investigate," said the driver at last. So they did, puffing under a bridge towards an old mine. Amongst the trees and wooden sheds stood a little old engine, sad and alone, with only his driver for company. The engine's fire had gone out, and he was frightened. Then he heard the sound of something coming towards them. "What's that?" he stuttered. Then he and driver saw Thomas. "It's a steam engine!" the old engine cried. "Well, I'll be," gasped Thomas. "It's a railway traction engine! And I thought Trevor was the only traction engine left." The old engine looked startled. "Hello," smiled Thomas kindly. "You're not broken up or rusty. Whatever are you doing out here?" "I'm Fergus," replied the old engine. "I was sent to the smelter's yard to be broken up, but I escaped because it's so scary there." "That was a brave thing of you to do," said Thomas. "I know of 2 other engines who escaped from scrap, but both of them had help from friends of mine." Fergus smiled. Then he sighed. "But I'm worried that my controller will be cross," Fergus went on, "and that he might send some devious diesels to find me." "Why were you sent there in the first place?" asked Thomas. So Fergus told Thomas his story. "I was the pride of the cement works," Fergus began. "Then one day my controller brought a diesel to help him out for a while. The diesel didn't know the rules. I told him to do it right, but he took no notice and got covered in cement dust. Then the diesel told me that my controller said I was old-fashioned and that I was going to be replaced with a more revolutionary engines like him. He told me I was to go to the smelter's yard to be broken up, but when I got there I was so frightened and I wanted to go back home. I'd never ever broken the rules, but when I saw 2 diesels charging towards me, my driver decided that we would escape. So we did. And ended up here in this old mine." "As I said," Fergus concluded, "I'm now frightened that my controller will send diesels to hunt me down." Thomas sighed with relief. "That sounds like a diesel I once knew," he said, "but my controller, Sir Topham Hatt, found out about his devious schemes and sent him packing." "So you're a Fat Controller's engine," replied Fergus. "Oh, I'm saved." But Thomas wasn't so sure. "Oh well," Fergus sighed sadly, "I might as well stay here to rust or let those tyrant diesels find me." "There's a signal box not too far from here," said Thomas's driver. "I'll go and telephone the Fat Controller right now." "Oh, thank you," smiled Fergus. The Fat Controller was enjoying a late tasty supper of kippers when he got the call. "So Thomas has found railway traction engine, you say?" he said. "I shall come along and see this discovery for myself. I shall meet you at the smelter's yard." So Thomas took Fergus to meet the Fat Controller, but Fergus wasn't so sure about meeting him at the smelters. When they arrived, the Fat Controller was waiting. Fergus was worried. He didn't know if he was sure if he was safe. "Don't worry," whispered Thomas. "The Fat Controller is a good man. He likes to save steam engines." The Fat Controller inspected Fergus carefully. He sighed after a long inspection. "Do you save him, sir?" said Thomas. "He was the pride of his cement works on his old line. I'm sure he can be the same at our works. It'll save Bill and Ben working there, the quarry and the China clay works." "Well, we don't need another traction engine," the Fat Controller sighed. "We've got Trevor." "But Trevor can't run on rails," Thomas protested. "Plus Fergus could help out in the quarry too, and he could also teach his working ways to us all. Do buy him, sir, please." "We'll see," replied the Fat Controller. A few days later, Thomas was collecting his passengers as usual from Maithwaite Station when he heard a familiar whirling sound coming into the station. "Fergus!" Thomas smiled. "You've been saved!" "Oh, yes, indeed," replied Fergus happily. "The Fat Controller bought me cheap from my old controller, and now I'll be living at the Sodor Cement Works." "Peep, peep," whistled Thomas happily as Fergus puffed happily away, giving Thomas a cheerful peep, peep in return. Fergus worked happily at the Sodor Cement Works. He's still the pride of the cement works, and sometimes works at the quarry with Mavis, Bill, and Ben. Although the twins teased him at first and got tired of him saying, "Do it right! Do it right!" they learned a lot from him, particularly after a near accident with the rock crusher. Fergus was praised a hero by the twins that day. And Fergus also knows that he has a good friend in Thomas.